First of all, thank you everybody for coming. I want to start by just saying what a tremendous amount of gratitude I have for Paul, Vanessa, Christine, Janet. It truly is a collaborative effort, and the effort that comes from Gallery 133 in the curation and the final presentation is a really large part of what you're seeing up on the walls. I want to talk about inspiration, and I want to talk about how it's a little different with what I do as a photographer versus what a painter might do. Photography is pretty easy to define, and there actually is a literal definition. Photo is light, and graphy is writing. So it truly is writing with light. It's telling the story with light. There was a time when I just started that a professional looked at my work and said, you need to be a little more sensitive to the light. And it was a turning point for me. I recognized that I needed to be totally sensitive to the light. That's all I'm actually doing, is hunting out good light and finding a way to make that light into something that's going to be interesting to look at. The harder thing to define is what's art and what's an artist. And I think that art is the ability to have an emotion and then convey that emotion through any medium that you choose to the person who receives it. And if you've done a good job with your medium, whether it be writing, whether it be dancing, whether it be painting or photography, then the person who's engaging with what you've created feels a little bit like you felt. And it affects an emotion that was the same emotion or emotion that you're intending them to have when you were standing in front of this incredible, beautiful sand dune and clay pan, or under that pier, or in front of those mysterious doors, and from the first step, feeling that emotion is to me what makes you an artist. I think you either feel it or you don't feel it, but that's necessary but not sufficient. I think you have to feel it, and then you've got to technically figure out a way to actually convey it and communicate it. So I want to talk a little bit about my process. And I think that when I finish talking, I think it'll be clear that my process, it's a royal my process, because my process doesn't just include me. And my process starts with something that I didn't create, gets into a part of it that I do create, and ends with something that Vanessa's got a lot to do with. It is a team effort, photography, probably more so than painting. And I think that it's important to highlight that and to be grateful to everybody who helps get my emotion and my vision into a way that you can properly interact with. So the first thing I do is I start thinking about, and I'm a travel photographer. I'm crazy. I mean, I've been to 43 different countries, and I will sit for hundreds of hours, my wife and family can attest to it when I'm not watching Blue Jays games, and look at photographs and look at places and look at photographs and look at places. And I will key in on a mountain or a sand dune or a place that I fall in love with. And I say, I need to go to that place and make a photograph. Now, the damn problem is most of them aren't in Toronto, unfortunately. And some of them involve a tremendous amount of travel to get to. And then when your plane lands, they involve a lot of travel to get to. And then when you can't drive anymore, they involve a lot of travel to get to. So I do a lot of flying and driving and hiking and waiting and crazy stuff. This particular sand dune, my wife isn't feeling good. She's not here today. But I owe her debt of gratitude for tolerating the 7.5-hour drive and 2-hour hike to be standing in this spot. Once in my crazy mind, I decided I have to have a photograph of this incredible salt flat called Dead Vlei in Namibia. So first I visualize what I want, and then I figure out where the hell it is, and then I figure out how to get there. And there's planes, trains, automobiles, hikes, all kinds of wacky things that get me into this particular location. Then there's a whole element of what I do, which is studying weather, believe it or not. Because if photography is writing with light, and if I don't get to use artificial light because I'm a nature photographer, then I'm stuck with whatever light I've got in that particular moment. And the entire thing is about being in the right place at the right time when the light is right. A question I get all the time, and I'm happy to answer it on each one of the questions, is did you Photoshop that image? Are those colors real? And did you use a filter program in order to do it? My primary technical tool to enhance color is something we all have. It's called an alarm clock. and I'm standing in places that are at the moment that the light is absolutely at its most vibrant, most beautiful. Otherwise, I don't want to be standing there. So is there some enhancement in the images? Yeah, there is. I use a circular polarizer. There's a little bit of post-production, but for the most part, it's about being in that place at that time when that light is absolutely perfect, and I will go to massive amounts of lengths to get into that particular location. And once the image has been captured, it's not like I go to this particular location, and this is one of the beauties of being a photographer. No one's gonna tell me I can't stop shooting. It's digital. It's not like I'm carrying film with 24 exposures. I'll shoot this for an extended amount of time, and then I'll go to great lengths to actually figure out which image had the light at its absolute essential 100% peak and which image was the composition that I wanted. Now, some places I can stand there for a fair amount of time, but the vast majority of work that I do, the light only looks like that for somewhere between 30 seconds and 5 minutes. So there's this feeling of exhilaration. You know, imagine you're thinking about a place for months. You convince your wife to include Namibia on your honeymoon. You fly to Windhoek. You then meet some crazy person who drives you for 7.5 hours. You get up 4 hours before sunrise, drive for an hour into the desert, hike for an hour. You find the composition you actually want, and then you know you better get it right in about 40 seconds to a minute. And if you don't get it right, you don't get another chance, and you're not going to be back in that location. And that's part of the thrill of what I do. And there's an exhilaration, there's a rush to actually making the photograph when I know the light's right. Another question I get is, did you know you had one? Did you know you had a great photograph? And the answer is, I knew I had a chance. Most of the time, I know I have a chance. I know that the light's cooperating, and I know I've got a chance to get it. And I know I'll kick myself if I make a tiny little mistake. Because what you don't see on this wall are the bad ones, and sometimes there's bad ones. Sometimes there's ones that I didn't get the composition just the way I wanted. It wasn't just as sharp as I wanted. We all look good on an iPhone, but I'll tell you something. If you ever want to be humbled as a photographer, and I've been humbled as a photographer too many times, blow the damn thing up 7 feet and then take a look at what it looks like. Because if there's any lack of sharpness based on your technique or based on your tools, that's out there for the whole world to see. And so there's that amount of fear and exhilaration and excitement that I have. I want to skip now to the part that Gallery 133, like no other gallery, and I've worked with other galleries before. I've never had a relationship like I have with this gallery. But the amount of value add that happens next, because a lot of times I'll come and I'll have collaborative meetings with everybody here, and we'll have dialogue about which images, from a curator's perspective, she thinks mean something, and it's so helpful to me. And then beyond that, and I'm saying Christine, Paul, Janet are part of it as well. We'll go to great lengths to come up with a way to present the work. This is an area where we go from what I do to an area that I've got a wonderful team of people that are actually helping me do. And what you guys see and what you get and the final product, which I'm very proud of, is a combination of starting first and foremost with something that none of us created, which is these incredible, incredible places in nature. I'd like to think very good photographic technique and artistic sense to get the composition right, and then some wonderful thought about curation and production and presentation. And that's why I really view it as a collaborative effort. There is no balance. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I do this. I do this like I breathe. I do this because I love so much being in those moments, standing in those places, seeing these things, making these pictures, and then being able to share it with people. And I get incredible amount of satisfaction out of every single element of what I do. And I also get tremendous satisfaction out of knowing that my photographs are in people's homes, are in people's offices, are in restaurants, are in clubs, and people can walk by my images every single day, and maybe for a minute, for a moment every day, have that same emotional connection with the beautiful thing that I saw. So what I do is there's a number of photography websites that I'll research, and I'll look at other photographers that inspire me, and I'll look at what other people have been doing, and it's kind of iterative, right? I'll spend a fair amount of time because I'm interested. Wow, I like this person's work. Oh, he just shot Iceland. Oh, he's doing some stuff in the Southwest. I was in that location in the Southwest. What's this place? So you kind of start following and getting inspired. And there's so much on the internet, you can kind of narrow down locations and get a pretty decent sense. What you can't do, when I started, I thought you could just drive to a really beautiful part of the world, jump out of your car, step outside, and take a photograph. Well, it doesn't really work, unfortunately. I've shot sand dunes in the Sahara, in Morocco, in Colorado, and in Namibia, several other places that are eluding me right now. But I love sand dunes because of the curves and the light play. And Sossusvlei had the biggest ones in the world. So it was on my mind as a place that, you know, one of these days I'd love to shoot those dunes. A lot of my work historically has been grand landscapes, and I'm naturally inclined to shoot big, beautiful mountains and reflecting lakes. And Vanessa saw these and said, no, let's talk about the doors for a little bit. They're very artistic. They're very beautiful. They're you. It's not what you typically present, but it's very much your work. I could look at it and know it's Mark Brodkin's work. It's a place called Koolmanskop. If you walked by it, if you drove by it, you couldn't drive by it fast enough. It's literally in the middle of the Namib Desert. You have to fly to a special airport to get there. There's no reason to be there other than this old town. It was a diamond mining town that had been abandoned when they learned that there were not really as many diamonds as they thought would be there. But they had built this little town, and they had all this colorful wallpaper and painting. And they were too close to sand dunes. This was in the 30s, and over the years, the sand dunes has moved in and reclaimed the town. And I saw a photographer called Ian Plant who had shot this particular ghost town and thought, I'm finding this damn place and going to it because I'd love to shoot this whole concept of these beautiful, colorful walls that have been reclaimed by sand. It just touched me, and I had a connection to sand because I shoot sand dunes a lot. What's kind of neat about this one, if you want to take a look here, the walls were less colorful in this one than the other ones, but the sand was very pristine, and the walls, the way the paint had eroded on the walls, looked like clouds to me. And I looked at this picture and I thought, isn't this a great kind of connection between the interaction between nature and man, and yet it almost looks like it could be nature. At first glance, you could look at this and think this was a painting, and this was the sky, and these were the clouds in the sky. So what I liked about this is there's an architectural urban decay, kind of more gritty feel to it, yet at the same time, there's a very pristine natural feel to it. If I can communicate clearly some of the most incredibly beautiful things in nature, the eye being the royal eye, the whole team can communicate some of the most beautiful things in the world in nature and share them and allow people to have them in their homes, so that if even for a moment every day they get to feel a little bit of what I felt in that moment, then there's nothing I'd rather do, and it's a wonderful way to spend time on this planet. So thank you very much for listening to me drone on.